What is now an association of almost 100 corporate foundations and companies in the Philippines began in 1991 as a brainchild of a few like-minded organizations who gathered to share each other's best fit practices on how the business sector can help improve society.
There is greater impact when programs and projects are done in a collective manner. To be able to achieve social change, there needs to be a deliberate complementation in programs and projects that various organizations implement. We saw therefore the potential of a collective force to professionalize community relations and corporate philanthropy.
The group during the time wanted to prove that corporate foundation exists because there are needs of societies that needs to be answered.
In 1996, LCF officially registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Since then, corporate social responsibility in the Philippines has evolved, with LCF being at the forefront of the CSR advocacy.
We aspire for a financially inclusive society, So essentially that contributes to a better nation. We can only do so much, but if we multiply it by 100 members, diba? Di multiplied rin yung impact namin by 100, right? And LCF as an organization aims to get together these like-minded organizations, these foundations, to work on specific common goals as one.
We all felt that under our corporate big brothers, we were being guided expertly. And so learning from each other this way, there was like a wider space forward that was created for everyone so that we could really participate in nation building.
Each of our organization, you see, has its own strengths. But individually, we can only create a ripple. On the other hand, if we work in concert, then we can really generate a big wave, a wave strong enough to effect a lasting change in society. And true enough, over the past 25 years, LCF and its members have been making waves.
It has been honing and nurturing the country's best CSR practitioners and thought leaders, influencing the inclusion of CSR in business administration education, recognizing the best in CSR advocacy through the CSR Guild Awards, one of the 6 largest NGO networks that established the Philippine Council for NGO Certification, or PCNC, and one of the founding members of the ASEAN CSR Network, reinforcing its vision as a leading network of practice-based strategic CSR that advances sustainable development. A business sector that's committed to engage with communities and partner institutions by advancing arts and culture, ensuring disaster resilience, promoting education for all, supporting sustainable livelihoods and enterprises, addressing the need for environmental protection, espousing financial inclusion for everyone, and championing the Filipinos' health and well-being. LCF puts its advocacy to practice through programs that provide learning opportunities for stakeholders, research and course offerings by its flagship program, the CSR Institute, roadshow activities for fellow institutions via CSR On the Go, and the CSR Lecture Series for university students. And finally, the LCF CSR Expo, its annual conference and exposition since 2001. LCF stages the expo every first week of July, officially declared as National CSR Week. The mobility restrictions and safety protocols due to COVID-19 pandemic did not hinder the LCF and its members from reaching out to communities and institutions severely impacted by the health crisis. The 19th CSR Expo and Conference highlights the theme, Rebuilding Together with a Changing Landscape of CSR. This year, the LCF marks its silver anniversary. Indeed, there are challenges ahead for CSR in the Philippines, and LCF looks ahead, ready to face the new normal.
I encourage those companies who have foundations or companies that are thinking about doing sustainable work in terms of working with communities to join the LCF, because there's a lot that you can learn, not just from the LCF as an organization, but that's very important, but more so from the fellow members that you'll be interacting with. That's how we grew. Learning from our peers.
First 25 years is a milestone. Be part of the next 25 years or so. In anything and everything we do, we gotta be proud enough to say that we can do it, but we can do it better together. Kaya muling paalala ko sa bawat isa, manatili tayong maging magiting sa isip, sa salita, at sa gawa sa ating pang-araw-araw na buhay para sa ating kapwa at sa nag-iisang bayan natin.
It may take a while before we can fully recover from the effects of the pandemic. But as shown by LCF's 25 years of CSR excellence, we can always look forward to a better and brighter future together.
Dear God, thank you for the opportunity to meet together. Please help us to come together to make this institution reflect your kingdom. Breathe life into our ideas and decisions. Help us build a team that has love and respect at its heart. Give us the strength to continue working for your kingdom in this time of pandemic. Lord, come give us the inspiration to be the best we can be. May we be a shining example of your goodness and truth within, wherever we are. Inspire our thoughts, discussions, and ideas, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today All that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, telas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupi, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatak tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong pagaw, ay hinatang tula, kawin sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitindig, makituwin at araw niya kailan pa may di magtitindig, luman ang araw ng walhaging pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo, ang inigaya ng pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Marami na akong papel na ginampanan.
Marami na akong papel na hinawakan.
Pero parating na ang pinaka-importanting papel.
Nagagampanan ko. Ako ay gaganap na.
Taong Bayan 1.
Taong Bayan 23.
Taong Bayan 456.
Taong Bayan 111,213. Taong Bayan 141,500.
Taong Bayan 17,181,920.
Taong Bayan 25,262,720.
Taong Bayan 40 million. We are 40 million strong. Dami pala natin, no?
40 milyong kabataan ang maaring maging botan.
40 milyong kabataan ang may kakayahang kumilos.
At baguhin ang kasaysayan. Makapangyarihan ang papel na ito.
Mahalaga ang papel na ito.
Tatanggapin mo ba ang hamon?
O hahayaan mo na lang masayang ang papel mo? Ang boto ko ay para sa
mga mahal ko sa buhay.
mga OFWs,
Frontliners.
Kabataan.
Mga dating kabataan. Kababaihan.
Kalalakihan.
Mga kapatid na LGBTQIA+.
Mga katutubo.
Mga magsasaka at manggagawa.
Mga maralita.
mga pinatahimik at walang boses sa lipunan.
Gagampanan ko ang papel na ito dahil pangarap ko ang isang bayang
May masaganang agrikultura.
Isang bayang ang mga mamamayan ay hindi na kailangang malayo sa mga mahal sa buhay.
Para magkaroon ng oportunidad at makaahon sa kahirapan.
I dream of a nation
Where education is a right and not a privilege.
At lahat ng kabataan makapagtatapos ng pag-aaral nang hindi nangangamba.
Dahil sinusuportahan siya ng kanyang bayan na magtagumpay sa buhay na kanyang pinapangarap.
Where health is a right and not a privilege.
Kayang harapin ang pandemya o kahit anumang disaster ng may kahandaan.
Isang bayang kinikilala na ang malusog na isip ng mamamayan ay mahalaga sa pagpapaunlad ng mga pamayanan.
May paggalang sa kalikasan.
A nation where all genders
are respected.
Where I see my taxes prioritize education.
Public healthcare and housing at lahat may access. Lahat may access. Lahat may access. At sapat na sahod.
Where arts and artists' contributions are recognized and supported because we are essential too.
We are essential too.
At ang mga pangako ay hindi nagiging buhangin.
Hindi
Nagiging
Buhangin.
where I can speak up and be heard.
not antagonized.
Isang bansang hindi kailangan matakot ng taong bayang magpahayag ng katotohanan.
Where leaders value, serve, and protect its people, not kill them.
Not kill them.
Walang diskriminasyon. walang karahasan.
Where we are not misled by fake news and misinformation. Where truth prevails.
Isang bayang kinikilala ang kanyang sariling identidad.
Malaya sa hawak ng mga dayuhang bansa. A nation where trapos are cancelled.
Trapos cancel?
No. Trapos cancelled.
Where our government officials are not mere politicians, but servant leaders.
Mga leader na tapat, patas, makatao, makabayan.
Where leaders push for the quality of life that every Filipino truly deserves.
Iisa lang naman talaga ang layunin natin.
We all want a better place to live in.
Gusto na namog mas maayong lugar nga kapuyan. Magpati kita nga may kabaskog ang aton tingog.
Kailangan nang maniwala tayo na may bisa ang ating tinig.
Sa dami natin, tingin mo wala tayong power?
Maging matalino, maging mapanuri.
Boboto tayo. Dahil mas marami tayo.
May pag-asa pa.
Mahalaga ang papel natin.
Dahil tayo ang magmamana ng bayang ito.
Magandang umaga! Naimbag nga adlaw, paayong buntag sa tanan. Good morning, ako po si Gertrude Farenas or Ate Gertie for short, mula sa Youth Leadership for Democracy or YouthLED, ang inyong host for this webinar. Maraming salamat sa inyong pakikibahagi mula sa iba't ibang lugar sa bansa sa mahalagang araw na ito. Dahil 90 days na lang, eleksyon na naman. Ano nga ba ang papel natin sa halalan tulad ng napanood natin sa video? Bakit mahalagang malaman na hashtag 40 million strong tayong mga kabataan? Bakit mahalaga na may hugot o dahilan tayo kung bakit tayo boboto? Ang sagot sa mga tanong na ito at iba pang kaalaman tungkol sa kahalagahan ng ating pakikilahok sa halalan, sama-sama nating aalamin sa ating webinar ngayong umaga. Jam-packed ang ating Zoom room ng mga students at scholars mula sa iba't ibang miyembro ng League of Corporate Foundations. Gayun din ang iba pa nating partners. Gusto ko sanang basahin isa-isa pero mas maganda siguro kung itatype na lang natin sa ating Zoom chat ang kukumpleto sa sentence na ito. Ako si, tapos yung pangalan, mula sa saang paaralan, at school ng LCF member, at ngayong halalan ako ay blank. Ayan, uulitin ko Pakitype na lang sa Zoom chat. Ako si, tapos ang inyong pangalan, mula sa anong school, at scholar ng sinong LCF member, at ngayong halalan 2022, ako ay blank. Ayan, sige, pakitype na lang pumasagot ninyo sa Zoom chat. Ayan, habang kayo ay nagtatype, no? Please be reminded of the following house rules during the conduct of our webinar for today. Ayan. So house rules po natin, number 1, you have to make sure to follow the naming convention through your org_name. For example, if galing ka pong LCF, LCF_Juan de la Cruz. And then send your messages through chat and questions through the panelist. Stay seated and stay present. And of course, share your learnings, realization, and experiences in the session through your social media and use the hashtags. Ayan po. Ayun, so wag po natin kakalimutang sundin ang ating house rules for the smooth flow of our webinar for today. Maki-join din po tayo at baka kayo pa ang mapili ng LCF sa best comment or insight. Ayan, so meron tayong election trivia for today. Alam nyo ba na ngayong araw din magsisimula ang campaign period para sa mga national positions na ating ihahalal? Ito ay ayon sa COMELEC Resolution number 10695 o ang Calendar of Activities ng May 9, 2022 National and Local Elections. Speaking of trivia, na-inform ba kayo na may pre-test tayo? Yes, as in may pa-quiz ang YouthLED and LCF. Masusubok ngayon ang inyong galing at bilis sumagot. Handa na ba kayo? So mag-flash po sa screen ang inyong poll, tapos pipiliin lamang ang best answer mula sa mga choices. Ayan, sige. So habang hinintay natin yung poll, no? Sige, basahin natin kung sino mga nandito, no? So ito, ako si Michael Anjo H. Jaime mula sa pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila at scholar ng Security Bank Foundation, at ngayong halalan 2022, ako ay makikibahagi sa pagbabago ng ating lipunan. Ayan. Hello sa'yo, Michael Anjo. Ito naman, ako si Shairan Nual mula sa Ateneo de Manila University at scholar ng Aboitiz Foundation, at ngayong halalan 2022, ako ay boboto ng karapat-dapat na leader. Sige, let's keep them coming, no? Yung mga gusto maglagay sa Zoom chat, maglagay na tayo sa Zoom chat ng ating introduction. Ayan, hello, ako si Kimberly Cham. Tama ba, Cham or Chan? Mula sa DLSU at scholar ng SPFI Foundation. At ngayong halalan 2022, ako ay boboto ng tama. So, hello, Kimberly. Ako si Bianca J. Cañada mula sa Celestino G. Tabuena National High School, SCFI Scholar, at ngayong halalan 2022, ako ay pipili ng karapat-dapat para sa ating lipunan. So, hello, Bianca. Ako si Edmond Vista, mula sa Legazpi City National High School at scholar ng Sunwest Care Foundation Incorporated. At ngayong halalan, malaki ang aking papel sa pagpili ng karapat-dapat na kandidato. Ayan, marami sa atin so far, no, na nagsasabi na, ayun nga, pagpili ng tamang ng karapat-dapat na kandidato, we're going to exercise our right to vote, ganon. So, maganda yan na nakikita natin sa youth ngayon na maraming ang mga nakikita na nire-recognize natin yung power natin para ma-change natin kung anong nangyayari sa gobyerno through voting. So sunod naman, ako si Mark Cedric Lorenzo mula sa Technological Institute of the Philippines at scholar ng Rebisco Foundation, at ngayong halalan 2022, ako ay makikialam at magiging responsabling botante. Tama yan, no? Siyempre parang kasama rin dito sa pagiging responsabling botante natin, yun nga, kailangan nating malaman kung ay kailangan nating makialam sa mga nangyayaring mga voters education na mga ganap, ganun, para siyempre, di ba, mas malaman natin sino ba dapat, yung mga dapat nating iboto. Ayan, ako si Jera Tordesillas mula sa UP Diliman at scholar ng Security Bank Foundation, at ngayong halalan 2022, ako ay boboto para sa ikaliliwanag na ating kinabukasan. So nakikita nga natin na dito sa pagboto natin, di ba? Ito yung parang sa tingin natin magbibigay ng para syempre mas maliwanagan din natin yung yung future natin, especially tayong mga kabataan, tayo yung magbibitbit ng future natin. So, di ba, nakikita natin na mahalaga nga ang pagboto ngayon. Ngayon, ako si Abigail de Tamar. Sige, last na to Tapos babasahin pa natin yung iba sa susunod. So ako si Abigail de Tamar mula sa Polytechnic University of the Philippines at scholar ng Security Bank Foundation Incorporated. At ngayong halalan 2022, magiging masuri ako sa pagpili ng mga bagong leader ng bansa. So alam ko maraming mga maraming mga gusto talagang mag-participate sa ating webinar ngayon. Kaya maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga naglagay na kanilang mga introduction sa ating chat. So ngayon, tayo ay So ayun, so marami pa tayong mga election trivia and of course pati pa quiz. Kaya makinig mabuti sa ating resource person mamaya. So bilang pagpapatuloy, let us now hear the welcome remarks and messages from our organizers. Join me in welcoming the Executive Director of Vivant Foundation and LCF Trustee, Mr. Shem Jose Garcia. Let us give him a virtual clap.
Good morning, and thank you all for taking part in the Youth Voters Education Series. Thank you also to our partners at YouthLed PH for conducting this series. While the members of the League of Corporate Foundations have many advocacies, the area where we have the strongest focus is in education. with our Committee for Education having the largest membership of all of the committees. So thank you, ComEd, for working with YouthLed PH to make this happen. At the LCF, we understand that access to quality education is the most important factor to building a stronger nation. And we also understand the importance of coordination between the private sector and the government. However, the degree of impact we can make is directly affected by those that the people elect into government. I remember my very first election. I had just turned 18 a few months before a presidential election, which also followed a crisis to our economy, as this was the election that took place right after the ASEAN economic crisis in 1997, before most of you were born. Today, we find ourselves recovering from an even greater crisis as the whole world is still trying to figure out what the new normal is. Who we elect can steer our economy to recovery, or they can lead us deeper into debt. They will be the ones who shape what education looks like, whether in-person learning will continue to be suspended or if it'll be restored. They'll determine how we're going to go about this, how we're going to get out of this. They can bring us to the top or they can sink us further into the mud. Every election is important. The exercise of our democratic rights is important. There are countries that have never experienced this right, and our own country has experienced in the past that this right can be taken away. Our goal here is not to convince you to vote for one candidate over another, but to really look inside yourselves as to what your values are and who can best represent them. To understand the challenges facing our country so you can decide for yourselves who can best lead us out of one of the most challenging turning points in our history. As a young country, the youth vote has the potential to turn the tide. The right to vote is a great responsibility. Please use it wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. We will now hear from LCF's partner in this webinar, our Chief of Party from YouthLed. Please help me welcome by giving virtual heart icons to Miss Natalie Christine Jorge.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the YouthLed team, we would like to welcome you to our Youth Voters Education Series, organized in partnership with the League of Corporate Foundations, an organization that is also close to my heart. We are proud of this partnership and the collaboration with the private sector that prioritizes youth and democracy and nation building. YouthLed is a program that provides leadership training, capacity building, civic and voters education to Filipino youth nationwide. Our goal is to strengthen and increase civic action and political participation and develop a deeper understanding of governance and democracy and why it is important for the youth to get involved and to let their voices be heard. We believe in the youth. We believe in your capacity to innovate and work towards addressing issues that your communities face. We believe in your capacity to uphold democracy, elect the right leaders, and use your voices to enlighten minds and make change happen in your schools, communities, cities, and the country. There is no small effort or action. Each of you and your participation contributes to the collective voice of the youth. Your participation and presence here this morning is testament to your commitment to be a part of that change. This series will help you learn more about voting and how you can exercise your rights in political and electoral participation. It will help you learn more about the political system and the positions that you will be voting for. When we vote, we take part in the process of electing leaders who can make positive change happen for our fellow citizens, communities, and the country. Kaya kailangan maging mabusisi sa pagpili ng nararapat na leader para sa ating bansa. At sa pamamagitan ng education series na ito, sama-sama natin itong matututunan at magagampanan. Thank you very much, dear students. Thank you very much to our YouthLed team, and thank you again, LCF, for this meaningful and fruitful partnership.
And thank you, Ms. Chang, for that very inspiring message. Ngayon naman po ay ating pakinggan si Mr. Reginald Andal, Executive Director ng Manila Water Foundation at LCF Vice Chairperson.
Good morning, our young Filipino voters. Let me say first, thank you to each and every one of you. You have responded to the call to participate in our sessions. Whatever your reason is in attending, I encourage that you make the most out of your time today. Why? Because it is no exaggeration to say that Filipino youth could decide the winners of the 2022 national elections. You are one of the registered voters from the youth sector that comprise 52%, or as we have heard, 40 million strong of our electorates this year. Hence, we have a key role to play in deciding who gets to lead our country and our community in the next 6 years. We all believe that can make huge and lasting impact to this great nation. It is in this reason why the League of Corporate Foundations, or LCF, being at the forefront of promoting and enhancing corporate social responsibility, took upon itself to provide a platform to inform and empower young individuals to become better nation builders. This initiative stemmed from the desire to educate and engage our youth, our students, scholars, alumni scholars, youth leaders, young professionals, as we shape our country's progress and future through the upcoming 2022 national and local elections. With the meeting of the minds and sharing of the hearts, our program was brought to life by the CSR pillars and LCF leaders, such as Mario De Requito of BDO Foundation, Chito Sobrepeña of Metrobank Foundation, Roel Maranan of Ayala Foundation, Maribeth Marasigan of Aboitiz Foundation, and Lilibeth Aristorenas of Unilab Foundation. With the support of the LCF Board of Trustees, headed by its chair Baste Quiñones of Pilipinas Shell Foundation, and efforts of LCF Committee on Education led by its chair Louis De Real of Security Bank Foundation, we are conducting today the first of the 6 series of the Youth Voters Education. We are also thrilled that we have the authority in increasing civic engagement and strengthening governance participation to facilitate our session, the Youth Leadership for Democracy, or YouthLed PH of the Asia Foundation. Let us extend our heartfelt gratitude to its Chief of Party, Ching Jorge, and Program Officer, Attorney Mildred Ople. Batch, maraming salamat. Today's session will let us learn the fundamental rights and reasons for participating in the democratic exercise of casting your vote. In our second session on February 22, we will have a deep dive on education issues and concerns, especially during this pandemic. And the last session on March 8, it is aimed that all participants will be able to choose the right and responsive leader. We will also experience a mock voting process. Are you all excited? So, what kind of Philippines do you envision in the next 6 years? Who among the national and local candidates can help us get there? I hope our 6-part series of voters education will let us understand the importance of this year's election. In one way or another, there is an LCF member organization who provided you the opportunity for proper education that may lead to prospects for employment or livelihood, even to availments of social or healthcare services. And more than ever, the pandemic made us realize that we have a social contract, a moral obligation to get involved, especially for the marginalized individuals who may not have the same privileges as ours. Mga kabataang Pilipino, ang iyong pagboto ay ang iyong kakayahang pumili at ang iyong responsibilidad. Ito ay ang iyong kontribusyon sa paghubog ng ating bansa. Ito ay makakaapekto sa iyong buhay at kinabukasan. Take advantage of this opportunity that you are here. You are here for our purpose. Listen and absorb as much as you can to vote responsibly in May. And as this is a collective effort, we also challenge each of you to not just learn, but to proactively step up and take the lead in empowering and enabling every voter, your family members, your relatives, your friends, to make an informed decision. Everyone, the future starts with the youth. It starts with you. Thank you and have a good day, everyone.
Ayan, maraming salamat, Mr. Reg Andal. Umpisa pa lang ay malaman na ang mga mensahe ng ating mga tagapagsalita mula sa LCF at YouthLed. Ngayon naman ay kilalanin natin ang magbibigay kasagutan sa ating mga tanong kanina. Mr. Emil Tapnio currently serves as the Youth Leadership Development Specialist at the Asia Foundation. Concurrently, he leads the technical team of the Youth Leadership for Democracy or YouthLED program, which aims to strengthen participation of Filipino youth in the democratic governance. Mr. Tapnio has over 15 years of technical and management experience in designing and implementing interventions for youth leadership in political participation and social impact. He counts over $50 million in program portfolio funding from the USAID, the US Department of State, Australian Aid, UNDP, and the Philippine government. His areas of expertise include education, economic empowerment, and human rights, with a focus on youth political participation and social involvement. Right after earning a degree in public administration from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, Mr. Tapnio has championed innovative leadership in the development sector. He regularly conducts trainings and workshops for young leaders and has presented on youth leadership, entrepreneurship, and technology at the United Nations headquarters in New York and Bangkok, the World Bank, the US Department of State, the US Congressional Youth Leadership Forum in Washington, D.C., and numerous universities in the US and the Philippines. In 2018, he completed his professional fellowship by the US Department of State's Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative, or YSEALI, in Hawaii and Washington, D.C., USA. In 2016, he was appointed as one of the global ambassadors of the International Young Leaders Assembly at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. Please help me welcome Mr. Emil Tapnio, or Kuya Emil. Heart po tayo!
Thank you. Maraming salamat, Jerty. Maraming salamat sa lahat na nandito. Gusto ko magpasalamat, of course, sa League of Corporate Foundations at sa YouthLED for co-organizing this Voters Education Initiative. So right now, I'm actually in Sorsogon City right now in Bicol Region. So Diyos marhay na aga sa Indogabos. Diyos marhay na aga sa mga kapwa ko Bicolano na estudyante na andito. I saw some students from Legazpi City, from Naga. But of course, I'd also like to extend my greetings to everyone from different parts of the country. Gusto ko rin magbigay ng shout out mula sa pamunuan at sa mga dati kong ka-opisina sa Metrobank Foundation. I see that Sir Alan Reyes is here. So right after graduation, I actually started working right straight in the development sector, starting with the Metrobank Foundation. So I'm so happy to be here. In fact, it was also through Metrobank Foundation where I first heard about the League of Corporate Foundations. So ayun, again, maraming salamat sa pag-imbita sa akin today. Coincidentally, today is also the official start of the campaign period for candidates. And what we're doing now is really a momentous step for, for us to understand how important voting is and how we should have an informed choice. Kanina sinabi ni Sir Reg Andal na meron tayong moral contract para i-representa ang mga marginalized sector, lalo ang mga marginalized sector para sa at mga walang boses para sa napipintong election na ito. So whenever we vote, salamin actually siya ng mga values natin, salamin siya ng mga aspirations ng mga Pilipino, salamin siya ng mga kagustuhan at pangarap ng mga Pilipino. So yung pagboto natin is napaka-importante. So just like you, I was also a student leader almost 20 years ago, but the difference is your generation now has more accessible information. Unlike my generation, all of you has a stronger or a strong, yeah, more stronger support system, and I'm really happy that you're also provided with opportunities like this, like Buddhist education, to learn more about, what needs to be completed, what needs to be done in preparation for the 2022 elections. So I hope you can see my screen. Yes, I trust that you do. Okay, so again, I was invited to talk about the different facets of youth engagement, which includes voting during elections. And of course, ang center ng ating usapan is why election matters. So nasabi kayo ni Sir Reg na in the coming days, there will also be successive discussions about different topics as part of this this voter education series ng LCF. So in the next 20 minutes, or rather in the next 60 minutes or less, let's learn together different forms of youth engagement. So don't worry, I'll try my best to lessen my talk and have more discussion. And throughout the discussion, I'll also pepper it with some questions na may prize. Okay, so si Ate Dred, yung nabanggit kanina ni Sir Reg, she is my teammate at YouthLed. Magbibigay tayo ng mga prizes sa mga kasagot ng tama sa tanong ko. Okay, so okay, ang content ng aking talk, we start first with a snapshot of how Filipino youth were engaged in various points of Philippine history. This is also to remind us that Filipino youth has always been at the forefront of pivotal points in our country's history. Next, let's find out the best practices and challenges of the Filipino youth as they take up space and champion issues that are dear to their heart. So magsimula tayo sa usapin about history, paano naging parte yung youth noon. Next is pag-usapan natin ang ibang-ibang issue, sample ng iba-ibang issue na talagang pinangunahan ng mga kabataan. And of course, after revisiting history and learning the context, let's check the pathways for support for Filipino youth, which we believe are essential elements in youth engagement. So sa YouthLed, naniniwala tayo na ang youth leadership, youth coalitions, civic education, and a special section on voter education or voter empowerment are some of the ways where we could demonstrate this. And finally, let's all learn how we can take part in some of the avenues presented to our youth sectors. So meron tayong mga recommended next steps na pwede nyong gawin sa inyong locality, mga pwede nyo gawin sa mga student organizations nyo, or pwede nyo kausapin yung eskwelahan nyo na pwede nyo pamunuan. Okay, so simulan na tayo. So the Philippines today benefited from a long history of youth-led democracy building. In fact, yung 1896 and 1898 anti-colonial revolutions, these were led predominantly by young people. So sila Gabriela Silang, sila Jose Rizal, sila Andres Bonifacio, sila Oriang de Jesus, Marcelo del Pilar, Teresa Magbanua, and Emilio Jacinto, they were actually all in their 20s and 30s when they fought for Philippine independence. Misa tuloy natatanong ko sa sarili ko, ano bang ginagawa ko nung ako'y nasa 20s pa lang, samantalang yung mga ninuno natin ay nakipaglaban para sa independence ng Philippines. These young leaders, ito yung mga nabanggit ko, they were not only revolutionaries but also visionaries. They were actually credited for drafting the first constitution in Asia with the goal of establishing a democratic state. So yun. Ang sectoral struggle naman and political participation were only realized in 1937 sa Philippines when Act 4112 granting women the right of suffrage was implemented, and when the peasant movements gained meaningful participation in political parties and in actual filling up of government positions. So dati kasi yung mga na parte lamang ng gobyerno ay mga mayayaman, mga makapangyarihan, pero mula nung panahon na ito, nagsimula na ma-include ang mga taong nasa laylayan kumbaga. Next is itong picture na to, at the age of 25, Mr. Luis Taruc led the Hukbalhap in guerrilla operations against the Japanese occupants. So after World War II, he continued championing for agrarian reform, and his struggle on behalf of the poor farmers persuaded local and national leaders to strengthen the legal rights of farm workers and led to a more equitable distribution of farmland. So isipin niyo yun guys, 25 years old. Talagang sobrang seryoso yung mga ginagawa niya, di ba? So yun. Jump naman tayo sa 1970s. Alam natin na the 3-month outbreak of violent demonstrations known as the First Quarter Storm saw students' unrest against the Marcos dictatorship peaking in January 1970. So this period was also when a coalition of youth networks and youth organizations fighting a dictatorship emerged. Ako, graduate ako sa UP Diliman, and nung tinitingnan ko yung mga history ng mga student organizations, nakita ko na napakaraming student organizations that were formed during the 1970s. So mga fraternities, student orgs, academic orgs, these were all formed during the 1970s to really take part in fighting against the dictatorship. When Marcos declared martial law in 1972, the 1935 Constitution was scrapped and an interim Batasang Pambansa was created and a new 1973 Constitution was adopted. So election for interim Batasang Pambansa was called for in 1978. So that election claimed to be towards restoration of old political order, but Marcos's purpose was to gain legitimacy for his unpopular administration and to create a rubber stamp legislature. The exercise defied democratic procedures and was characterized by rampant electoral manipulation done by the Marcos government to ensure victory. Itong next slide na to, gusto kong i-highlight ito because in April 1970, the emergence of a women's movement was marked by the formation of an all-women's group, the Malayang Kilusang Bagong Kababaihan, or the Free Movement of New Women, with the inspired acronym of Makibaka, which is the Filipino term for struggle. So para sa mga kababaihan na dito sa talk na ito, itong grupong ito, itong grupo ng mga kababaihan na ito, sila ang unang grupo after ng World War II na nabuo para again ipaglaban ang karapatan ng ating mga kababayan. The Aquino assassination in 1983 resulted in waves of protest forcing the creation of wider democratic space. The Batasang Pambansa elections happened in 1984 to replace the interim Batasang Pambansa, and the exercise was intended to divert the people's attention away from the Aquino assassination. But still, the period was marked by weakening popularity of Marcos and the people's growing political will to guarantee that their sentiments are reflected in election results. In the Aquino's program of restoring democracy starting in 1986, it started with promoting stability and establishing political legitimacy, which involved three major electoral exercises. So number one is the national plebiscite for the approval of the 1987 Constitution, the election for members of the Senate and the House of Representatives in May 1987, and the local elections in January 1988. Guys, I'd like to highlight lang na yung 1987 Constitution, which is ratified during that year, which is also the same constitution that we're using right now. Actually, iba-ibang sektor ang bumuo noon. At nakakatuwa na ang youth sector was also represented during that 1997 formation, and ang kumatawan sa youth sector ay si late Chito Gascon. Late Chito Gascon, he was the chairperson of the Commission of Commission on Human Rights, and is talaga sa mga leaders estudyante na tinitikala ng mga sangkatauhan ng araw. So the 1987 Constitution established a new system of elections. The terms of representative or congressman were reduced from 4 years to 3, and the presidential term was lengthened from 4 years to 6 years. Senators also serve a 6-year term, and of course, the suffrage became universal at age 18. So, ayan, nakita natin yung history ng iba-ibang ng iba-ibang nakita natin yung history ng Philippines at kung saan naging parte ang mga kabataan nito. Okay, may question muna ako. Sino sa mga bayani natin, yung mga nabanggit ko na nakilahok sa mga revolusyon? Yung mga binanggit akong pangalan kanina, di ba? Sino sa mga yon ang mapapangalanan nyo? Type nyo lang sa comments box. Tapos ang mga kasama natin sa YouthLED ay pipili ko sino yung mga tamang sumagot para ma-check natin kung nakikinig tayo. Okay? Ayan. So okay. So I'll allow na lang sila Ate Dred to check it out, okay? Ayan. So as years go by after 1986, the Filipinos youth began taking spaces in various issues and forms. So habang tumatagal, yung mga kabataan, mas lumaki ang kanilang kaalaman at na-embolden na rin sila to take on defending the rights of the Filipinos. So let's start first with this issue. So young persons with disability are now actively participating in their right to suffrage. So itong picture na to, this is actually taken during the registration before the 2013 Philippine midterm elections. In Cebu province alone, we saw over 65,000 persons with disabilities, voters who 65,000 PWD registrants who actually voted in the 2013 elections. Itong picture na to, her name is Iyay Antiporta of Córdoba, Cebu, and she's one of the PWD youth voters who mustered courage to register and vote. So guys, kasama ko actually nung nag-register si Iyay, ako nagpicture nito, and then she was given the chance na if she could just affix her thumb mark para sa pag-register niya. Pero sabi niya hindi. I'll really try to sign daw o mag-affix ng signature. And then after niya mag-sign, sinasabi niya, usad na akong tunay na Pilipino. And the following year in 2013, she voted for the first time. So itong picture to guys, Iyay is actually one of my power anchors. Kasi like kung iniisip na kung si Iyay nga talagang pinaglaban niya ang karapatan niya at responsibility niya, tayo pa kaya, di ba? So like kung binabalik-balikan ito, like kung ginagawang example na to. Having recognized as the greatest equalizer, students across the country called for higher state subsidy to education. In particular, was a call for at least 6% of GDP spending on education in a developing country like the Philippines. So itong call na to is actually halaw sa isang study called ng Delors Commission ng UN na nagsasabi na dapat 6% ng GDP should be allocated for education spending. So to date, this call has actually been echoed again by the Vice President Lenny Robredo, who said that education is the most tangible way to capacitate our youth. Another issue that the Philippine youth is very vocal about is, of course, love. Diba? Love is love. Equal rights are human rights for all LGBTQIA young couples who now asserts their right to raise their own family. So itong nasa picture na to, mga kaibigan ko sila, ako nagkumuha rin ng picture nito at nakakatuwa lamang na sila pinaglaban nila ang karapatan nilang magmahal. Time and time again, we saw more and more students actively participating in student movements. More and more people are actually voicing out their concerns. So example, itong picture ito. In addition, with renewed opportunity for the right to self-determination of our Muslim brothers and sisters, Bangsamoro youth also ensure their participation in BARM governance. Yeah, and of course, by and large, the call for climate justice are pushed more by the youth sector. And hindi pa pahuli, youth also sided and fight for better welfare security for labor workers. So ayan, napakita ko na kanina yung history, yung involvement ng youth sa Philippine history. Pangalawa naman, ito naman is ang mga sample na issue na pinangunahan ng mga kabataan. Now, from the rich history of youth engagement and youth taking up space over the years, we experienced shrinking of civic spaces and democratic backsliding. Growing disillusionment on politics and governance became prevalent. Weak rule of law, weak political ideologies and parties, and governance mechanisms at the local level are marked by tokenism and political dynasties. The youth are presented with challenges that hinder effective political participation. So talagang nakakapalumo na sa mga gains na nakuha natin over the years, sa isang igla pwede yung mabaliktad, di ba, ng isang administrasyon lamang. So yun kailangan nating bantayan. So next is so this current socio-political environment presents varying opinions on what democracy means for our country, what democracy means for you actually. Conversely, it also presented 3 opportunities for collective democratic action among citizenry, especially the youth. So tayo sa YouthLed, we at YouthLed believe that if the political leadership of the youth is developed, if the youth participation in governance processes through youth networks is increased, and if effective youth civic education is institutionalized, then democratic governance will be strengthened. So isa-isahin natin yun, okay? Ayan, unahin natin ang youth leadership. So youth leadership, we at YouthLed believes in empowering and enhancing the leadership skills of young leaders in schools, civil society, and private sector. This will increase knowledge and participation in democratic governance and encourage political participation, whether at a local, regional, or national scope. So itong picture na to guys, di ko alam kung kilala nyo ito. Actually, sige, magpa-game na lang tayo. Sinong nakakaalam ng kung sino yung taong, kung sino itong nasa picture, yung guy na nakaupo sa pinakakaliwa nyo? Sige, type nyo kung sino yan. No, pinakakaliwa. Itong nasa itong yes, tama si Marcos tong itong nasa gitna, yung nakatingin, pero itong isang young person na nakaharap sa atin sa far left, sino siya? Ayan. Sir Chito, tama si Sir Chito. That's actually Edgar Hobson. So si Ed Jot ay isa sa mga young leaders nung araw na talagang he negotiated for the rights and welfare of Philippine youth. But unfortunately, he was also killed during the Marcos dictatorship. So yan. Next is on youth coalitions. We in YouthLED believes in enabling the growth of empowered and independent youth constituencies with access to opportunities to engage in democratic governance activities, capability training programs, and participation in the development of local governance policies will directly benefit the youth and the communities that they are engaged with. Understanding their actual needs via training needs analysis, among others, before jumping into a prescriptive training, will generate buy-in buy-in from the youth themselves and will make the application of trainings more sustainable. So kanina sinabi ni Sir Reg na we are 40 million strong. Paulit-ulit sinasabi dun sa UBB natin na we are 40 million strong. And actually, as of November 18, COMELEC projected nearly 67 million voters will be eligible to cast their ballots, and some 30 to 40% of that number will be youth sector ages 18 to 30, sabi ni COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez. So let's capitalize, guys, on this pivotal number to swing the direction of our country. And we've already hit rock bottom and there's no way but to bounce up, diba? So yun. Okay, before ako pumunta pala sa next slide ko, may bibigyan ko sa inyo example. Kanina 'di ba sa isang slide ko, pinakita ko na sa Cebu City, we were able to register and actually encourage 65,000 PWD voters in Cebu province alone. Nakakatuwa na we would like to credit na the result of the 2013 elections actually was swung by the PWD voters, because the difference of the gubernatorial and vice gubernatorial positions were only around 29,000. So imagine, guys, kung hindi bumoto yung mga PWDs na yun, di ba? Iba sana yung namuno sa Cebu province. So yun yung pagpapakita na yes, pag ang isang sektor ay nagkaisa, it could really change the outcome of the elections. Okay, lastly, on civic education. In YouthLED, we believe in an effective civic education that seeks to combine concepts of democracy, citizenship, and democratic governance with policy and action programs that will allow the youth to practice civic duties and civic engagement in their daily lives. So sa Philippines, yung Philippine experience in civic education, it's actually teeming with best practices both from the social intervention carried out by the CSOs, LGUs, and private sector. On the other hand naman, yung traditional civic education from the academy is still seen as a potent way to instill values to the public. So reassessing and representing to the public is crucial at this period. Kung napapansin nyo, guys, di ba lahat tayo, or actually ang League of Corporate Foundation, it's part of the whole civil society. And nakakatuwa na ito yung example ko na napakalakas ng civil society in the Philippines, and kayo, hindi lang kayo mga scholar ng LCF, pero ginagabayan din kayo ng LCF para maging karapat-dapat na Filipino citizen, maging magaling na Filipino citizen. So that's actually a classic example of civic education through the social intervention carried out by the CSOs. So there. So these three pillars that I've mentioned, these are actually the pathways that will create generation of youth that are, number one, scaled and effective ways to engage politically. Number two, aware of the power and impact of your collective voices, and aware of your civic responsibilities. So we believe in YouthLED that this will lead to a dynamic population of youth engaged in democratic governance. So ayan. So nasabi ko na yung history again ng Filipino youth, involvement sa Philippine history. Pangalawa, yung mga issues na kinaharap natin. Pangatlo naman, pinakilala ko sa inyo kung anong ginagawa ng YouthLED. Now, dadako naman ako sa isang parte kung saan ang YouthLED has always been involved with from the start. YouthLED was implemented first in August 2020. And talagang isa sa mga pinapangunahan ng YouthLED ay ang voters education. So before that, gusto ko lang i-impart sa inyo that the human right to vote is embodied in three instruments. So itong pag-voters ed natin, nakapaloob ito sa tatlong three instruments: ang Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the 1987 Philippine Constitution. So itong pagpaparegister, pagpapaboto natin, hindi lang to any lang. Hindi lang to dahil gusto ko, gusto niya ng LCF, gusto ng COMELEC, pero talagang may basehan ito. So yan. So ang YouthLED, as I mentioned earlier, we actually have, we've conducted a massive voters education and massive voters registration program since last year. Pinangunahan ito ng teammate ko, si Attorney Dred Oble. At binuo natin ang kampanya, tinatawag natin Kabilang Ka sa 2022 or Hamon sa Kabataang Botante para sa Halalan. So, ang Kabilang Ka sa 2022, ito ay nakapalooban ng 3-point agenda. So, number 1, kasama ka, which means accessible registration and voting for every citizen. So bilang isang kabataang Pilipino, naniniwala tayo na kasama kayo upang palakasin ang ating kamalayan or ang ating awareness. Pangalawa is kabahagi ka, or ito ang ating voters education and issue-based agenda. So kabahagi ka, kasama kayo sa pananaliksik at pagbibigay ng linaw sa mga isyong kinakaharap ng bansa natin. So hindi lang tayo boboto, hindi lang tayo magkakampanya, pero tignan natin at limin natin yung mga isyong kinakaharap ng ating bayan. At syempre, kaisa ka. The good governance and civic education. Kaisa ka sa pagpapatibay sa isang maayos, makabago at makapilipino pamamahala. So hindi natapos yung responsibilidad natin sa pag-register, sa pagboto, pero andun pa rin tayo sa pagbabantay kung yung mga binoto natin ay nasa tamang landas, guys. Ayun. So ito ay, ang next slide ko ay pagpapakilala lamang kung ano yung mga ginagawa natin sa iba-ibang period na ito. So, as I mentioned earlier, when we started YouthLed, we did pre-election, we did coalition building, establishing election core group and network of youth organizations nationwide. We did voters registration. We actually directly assisted over 15,000 youth nationwide in our various voters registration activities. We're also doing voters education katulad nitong ginagawa natin, at syempre we're building youth agenda. Sa pagpasok natin ng election period, starting sa araw na to, magkakaroon tayo ng mga issue-based campaign or pagtingin kung ano mga binibitbit na kampanya ng iba-ibang kandidato. We're also looking at the various fora of the candidates both in the national and local level. At syempre, we're going to look at election monitoring hubs, pagtingin kung mayroong mga violation nga ba ng election laws and common rules. At syempre, ang YouthLed will also prepare for an election checklist. Mamaya ipapakita ko sa inyo yon, but I believe in the next forum or next sessions with LCF, mas makikita nyo kung ano ba ang tamang pagboto. At syempre, post-election, we're going to do review and assessment of the campaign promises monitoring. We're also going to lobby for the repeal and amendment of election laws, sa pagpapatibay ng election laws, at ang patuloy na pag-empower and pag-engage ng youth networks to participate in governance processes. At syempre sa YouthLed, may pinubuo tayo na tinatawag nating learning hubs katulad ng civic hubs and project citizens. So ito lamang ang ilan sa mga ginagawa ng YouthLed sa iba-ibang parte ng bayan natin, which we hope you could take part of. Ayan, so ito ang ilan sa mga ginawa na, hindi pala ilan, ito ang napakaraming ginawang voters education, voters registration talk ng YouthLed over the past months, and I really hope that you can also do the same thing in your locality. Walang may monopolyo ng pagkasabi ko anong sa voters ed, so we encourage you to do the same in your locality. Some numbers that we've completed over the past months. We were able to conduct at least 84 coalition building activities. We built over at least 20 youth coalitions. We've reached out at least 1.5 million through our voters education, registration, internet campaign. As I mentioned earlier, we're able to directly assist 15,000 voter registrants. Yung ating KKK or Kabilang Ka sa 2022 coalition, it has 891 organization partners, which allowed us to conduct 173 voters education. At syempre, meron din tayong over 800 organizations na sumama sa coalition, at meron din tayong mga podcast na at ngayon growing yung number na nakikinig. So yan, these are just some of the breakdown of our coalition, 891. Ito ang iba-ibang lugar kung saan nanggaling ang ating mga membros, ating Kabilang Ka sa 2022 coalition. So kung interested kayo guys na sumama sa Kabilang Ka sa 2022 coalition, hindi pa nahuli ang time, so you can always message us dito sa chat group na to. You can also message us sa ating Facebook sa YouthLed PH. Yan, these are exact numbers of how and what we've assisted over the past months. So in total, there is an estimated 65 million voters this coming 2022 elections. And I would like to say that YouthLed, among other coalitions and organizations, drove this number to go up talaga. And very important kasi guys. Ayun. So I'm gonna deep dive on the voters education campaign of YouthLed. So kanina di ba sinabi ko na meron tayong kabilang ka sa 2022 coalition or kabilang ka sa 2022 3-point agenda. Pangalawa doon sa agenda natin ay ang voters education or kabahagi ka section. So ito ipapakita ko sa inyo ang ilan sa mga parte ng ating voters election toolkit. This can actually be accessed through our website and you can freely download this as well. So gusto kong pasalamatan din ang Youth Vote Philippines, isang grupo ng mga kabataan who's always been at the forefront of advocating for youth rights and for voting. And they've been in existence since mid-2000s. So yun, ang ating chief party, si Ching Jorge at ang kasama niya si Dred Oble ay actually part ng Youth Vote Philippines. So nakakatuwa na naibabahagi nila ang ganitong mga materials para sa inyo din, di ba? Ayun, so question is, bakit nga ba mahalaga ang election, di ba? Bakit mahalaga itong ginagawa natin? So, suffice it to say na base sa 1987 Constitution, ang Philippines daw, ang bayan natin is a democratic and republican state, and ang soberanya ay nasa atin, nasa mga tao, and all government authority emanates from them. So, kung naalala nyo yung sinasabi dati na kayo ang boss ko o kayo ang tama nga ba yung sinabi ko? But point is, the power really comes from the people. And ang government, kung ano man ginagawa nila, dapat nakikinig siya sa mga sinasabi ng mga sangkatauhan. So, himayin natin yung sinabi kanina dito sa slide na ito. Ang Philippines daw, it's both a democratic government and a republican state. So, a democratic government, it's governed by the people or governed by the people. A form of government in which the supreme power is vested in the people. At ito ay ini-exercise lamang ng mga elected agents natin na niloklok natin sa posisyon. So yung mga iboboto natin, sila ang ating mga agents, kumbaga. At syempre, as a republican state, the power is held by the people and the representatives that they elect. An election is also a process in which people vote to choose a person or group of people to hold an official position. So kung sabi ko, sila lamang ay representative natin. Alam niyo guys, ako pag bumoboto ako, isa sa mga tinitingnan ko actually is sa mga tumatakbo, tinitingnan ko sila kung if they are a career politician or if they are really there to serve. Para sa akin kasi, yung mga taong tumatakbo or yung mga kandidato, para siyang calling, para siyang pagpapare, para siyang pagmamadre. You run for office and be prepared na hindi kayo yaman dapat ang una mong gagawin is public service. So, yun. Kasi para sa akin, ang mga tumatakbo, representative ko lang sila. Di ba? So, hindi dapat silang amo ko. Okay. Ito yung graphical representation of how should be the relationship of the people and our elected leaders. So, elected leaders fulfill their promises and rule their people with honesty, integrity, transparency, and utmost accountability. While people naman elect their representative or leaders who will govern them. Yung mga in-elect natin, they should have our shared values and aspirations. And at the same time, itong mga public leader natin, dapat tinutungtungan nila yung kasabihan na public office is a public trust. So, ayan. Okay, next. Bakit nga ba mahalagang bumoto? So, mahalagang eleksyon at pagboto dahil dito nakasalalay ang pagpili ng tamang leader ng ating bayan. So, tatlo ang pwedeng rason kung bakit mahalagang bumoto. Ito ay para makapili tayo ng narapat na pinuno, makapag-disenyo ng narapat na gobyerno, at syempre makabuo ng isang tapat at maayos na pamuno. Guys, gusto ko lang, I'd like to zero in on the first part, makapili ng narapat na pinuno. For me, I only do not look for a leader, I also look for a manager. Okay? As the President of the Philippines, as for example, the governor, as the mayor, especially itong mga chief executive positions na to, gusto ko makita ng hindi lamang ng isang leader, but someone who actually knows how to manage a locality. Kailangan natin yan tuloy ng bayan natin. So hawak ng Pilipino, hawak natin ang kapangyarihan upang makapili ng tamang pinuno na manindilbihan sa atin. Ayan. Ito ay pagpapakita rin kung ano ang electoral cycle. So from last year until yesterday was the pre-election period. Today actually is the start of the election period, and this will end until May 9. And then after May 9 would be the post-election period where we start with the monitoring of campaign promises. So very important guys, tingnan natin ito. Ay katulad ng sinasabi ko, like we na-emphasize, ang role natin, ang responsibility natin, ang involvement natin ay dapat dire-diretso until post-election period. Ayan. So in the next few slides, I'll be showing you understanding our power and right to vote. the COMELEC and the automated elections, and some slides on the election checklist. But please look out for the next sessions of LCF and YouthLED, because we would talk about who to elect, as well as yung sinabi ni Mr. Reg kanina na magkakaroon tayo ng mock elections. Ayan. So understanding our power and right to vote. So the right to suffrage. So katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, nakapaloob din sa 1987 Constitution. Registration or registering to vote is the first step towards becoming an active and engaged voter. In the Philippines, this is the only way to give every Filipino the opportunity to elect leaders of our country. But our role and responsibility do not stop from voting. From registration. It moves toward voting. Okay? At lagi nating emphasize na dapat it's both a right and an obligation and a responsibility. Kagabi lamang meron akong nakikita ng mga usap-usapan sa Facebook. Maraming mga nagpo-post na karapatan ko yan, karapatan ko bumoto kung sino gusto ko, wag niyo akong pakialaman, ganyan. And that's valid, right? In a democratic country, yes. Pwedeng karapan natin yan, hindi natin pakialaman. Pero I think it's also right to say na tayo bilang mga botante, we should also have an informed choice. Hindi lang basta-basta tayo boboto or pipili ng gusto natin suportahan dahil gusto natin, 'di ba? Dahil kilala siya, dahil marami siyang cool commercials, dahil maganda yung website niya. But also we should be informed rightly kung ano nga ba ang kinakatawan niya ng mga issue, kinakatawan niya ng mga plataforma sa gobyerno. Ayan, so suffrage is a right. Suffrage is a right and obligation to vote. Ito yung sinasabi natin paulit-ulit. It is a political right conferred by the Constitution, empowering every Filipino to participate in the process of government, which shows our exercise of democracy. And every citizen shall have the right and opportunity without any of the distinctions. Ayan, moving forward, gusto nating tingnan sino ba ang mga stakeholders sa election. Number one dyan is syempre the COMELEC and the automated elections. The COMELEC is the government, an independent body, and it's really so it's called as the election management body that's independent, voter-centered, and competent. And they are actually ordered to, or they're expected to manage an orderly, honest, peaceful, and credible elections in active participation with election stakeholders. Kasama tayo doon. Ayan, so nakapaloob din sa Constitution kung ano ang kapangyarihan ng COMELEC. Very important yan, guys. I'll move forward with the other slides, but really this is just a discussion of what governs or what covers the power of the Commission on elections. The COMELEC is composed of a chairman and 6 commissioners who are, according to the Constitution, must be a natural-born Filipino citizen, at least 35 years old, holder of a college degree, and must not have been a candidate for any elective position. So right now, we're actually in the process of filling up 3 positions that were vacated last week lamang kasi may mga nag-retire ng mga commissioners. So we're hoping that the commissioners that will be appointed would exercise independence, impartiality, and integrity. Gusto natin yan. Ayan. So itong part na ito sinasabi ko kanina na who to elect. We'll leave this up to our next session, but I'll jump right to our next chapter, which are some reminders lang on election checklist. Okay. So unang-una, during pre-election sa panahon ngayon, napakaganda na magsisimula na tayo sa pagbuo ng ating candidates list. Nire-recommend ng YouthLED at syempre ng YouthVote din na ito ang isang sa mga samples sa nating tingnan. Tingnan natin yung solid platform ng mga candidates. Tingnan natin yung past accomplishments ng mga kandidato kung meron man. Of course, kailangan natin tingnan yung educational background. Tingnan natin kung makatotohanan nga ba ang kanyang educational background. Kung tama nga ba, narapat nga ba ang kanyang background sa posisyon na tinatrabahan niya. We're also looking at the work history or leadership track record. And of course, we'll have to look at the programs or policies that they've proposed if they're a first-time candidate, or if they implemented something, if they're already a recurring candidate. Ako personally, I really look at and zero in on the stand on issues of the candidates. So among the things that I look at are education, their stand on women's and children's rights, environmental sustainability, among others. Napakaganda rin kung titingnan natin yung lifestyle ng mga kandidato. Kasi syempre, ibang usapin yun di ba? Nung isang araw lamang may nakita ako na na isang news, sinasabi doon na may mga presidential tayo nagsasabi na galing kami sa mga kahirapan, ganyan-ganyan. Pero kung titignan mo yung lifestyle nila, parang hindi naman reflective ng pagiging mahirap yung ginagawa nila, di ba? May mga taga-Forbes, may mga taga-Alabang. So medyo saliwa yung sinasabi nila sa kanilang lifestyle. So very important yun. Looking at their public record is also something that we should look at. Very important yun. And of course, their compliance to laws, policies, and other non-corrupt practices. Tandaan niyo guys, ang mga nasa posisyon, they're supposed to be model ng ating citizen, di ba? Model ng mga kabataang Pilipino. Kung hindi, kung merong mga corrupt policy sila or di sila compliant sa law, medyo taliwas yun sa mga pinagkalaban natin. At syempre, gusto natin na magkaroon kayo ng finalists of preferred candidates. On the election day itself, magdala kayo ng mga election ng inyong ID at syempre ng inyong listahan sa pagboto para mas mabilis ang inyong pagboto. Ayan. So every Filipino citizen, voters are entitled to free and informed choice. Every individual political choices and decisions made by the citizen voters will determine the kind of government that will serve them. And as a next step, these are some of the things that YouthLED are actually enjoining you to do. Of course, katulad ng sinabi ko, voting. Number one, you can participate and conduct your own voters education campaigns in your locality. You can find voter education tools in this website or in this link, www.youthled.org/resources. So website actually ito ng YouthLED. You can download those resources. You can use them and do your own voters ed in your locality. You can also message us if you want us to be part of your voters ed as well. At syempre, register and vote. In terms of policy reform, I'm also enjoining you to take part in the development of a national youth agenda together with the youth sector. Tayo sa YouthLED, binubuo na natin to at gusto natin na sa next administration, may pakita natin kung ano nga ba ang gusto, aspirations at mga pangarap ng ating mga kabataang Pilipino. We're also enjoining you to be vigilant with your elected government officials. I always mention this na ang role natin doesn't stop after voting. We have to look at, we also have to monitor the campaign promise of these candidates. At syempre, in terms of development capacity of the youth, let's look at implementing capacity development for youth leaders. Ako naniniwala ko na ang LCF ang LCF meron tayong mga magandang capacity development para sa mga kabataan. So kayong mga scholars, please, I enjoin you to take part in this. Libre yon. So, di ba? Might as well take advantage of it. I'm also enjoining you to support sangguniang kabataan in your area. Ito ay yung first step ng paikilahok na sa political participation. Very important yan. At syempre, I'm also enjoining you to take advantage of learning hubs in your locality. So as far as youth is concerned, we're establishing Project Citizen and Civica hubs. So ito isa sa mga simple na issue-based campaign paraphernalia that YouthLED is has produced. You can contact us if you want this, or you can actually download this from our website. You can freely use this as well. Again, sample activities we conducted in the past, which you can also replicate in your locality. These are some of the activities that you can look forward to na gagawin pa ng YouthLED. So we'll have a series of voter ed seminar. Please follow us on website. Please follow YouthLED in our Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, at iba pang social media handle ng YouthLED, because we're also doing a massive social media campaign. We're also releasing a weekly YouthLED post or newsletter. And also, ito pala, ang YouthLED will also put together what we call Notch the Vote with the youth sector reps of presidential balls. So we're pulling together the youth sector of the different presidential balls, hopefully 10 presidential balls na yun. We're also going to do reporting with Facebook ng mga election hub and trusted partners, and of course monitoring during election day. For our offline activities, we're doing barangay-based voters education in partnership with some of the partner organizations of YouthLED, and we're also working on parish-based voters ed sessions, and hopefully we can push for local debates in select LGUs with IBP and some law schools. Ayan. So time and again, the struggle of our independence and for democratic governance resulted in a kind of political system, political leaders, and electorate that we have right now. And again, if you ask me why election matters, election has been one major feature and mechanism in practice and through a more informed electorate is hoped to continue to serve as a vehicle towards genuine democratic governance. So that's how important election is. So itong picture na to, paulit-ulit kong pinapakita ko since the start, diba? Actually, yung picture na yan, that's me. And this was in Sorsogon Pilot Elementary School when I was part of the student council way back in 1995 to 1996. But the reason why I've been showing this photo from the start is that I'd like to highlight lang na maraming tumaya sa akin nung ako'y bata pa. Maraming sumuporta sa akin nung bata pa hanggang sa napunta na ako sa kung nasaan man ako ngayon. So pangarap ko rin na maraming tataya din sa mga bata tulad ninyo at ang YouthLED ay kasama nyo sa pagpanday ng magandang kinabukasan. So again, maraming salamat sa inyo, maraming salamat sa League of Corporate Foundations, sa YouthLED, and mabuhay ang kabataang Pilipino. Diyos maray na aga and Diyos mabalos.
Ayan, maraming salamat Kuya Emil sa napaka-informative at thought-provoking challenge sa ating mga participants today. Congratulations sa saglit lang ha. Maya-maya lamang po i-announce natin ng ating mga winners after i-verify ng ating mga fact-checkers. Kaya stay tuned at baka kayo na ang manalo na mga YouthLED kabilang KASA 2022 collaterals. So now we will open the Zoom chat, webinar Q&A, or if any participant wants to open the mic and ask our speaker directly his or her or their questions, please do so. Ayan, so pwede na po tayo magtanong guys kay Kuya Emil. Ayan, so...
By the way guys, don't call me sir, okay? Hindi niyo ako teacher. Kuya na lang or Emil, okay na yun?
Ayun nga, Kuya Emil. Actually, sa amin sa YouthLED, ang tawag namin sa kanya Emil. Pero Kuya Emil na lang tayo for today. Okay, so, syempre, di ba, habang naghintay tayo sa mga questions ng mga participants natin, magbibigay din muna tayo ng trivia about our participants. So, number 1, of course, ang youngest attendee or participant natin ay 14 years old. So, nakikita natin, di ba, na kahit wala pa sa voting age, yung ibang mga participants natin dito, nakikita natin na gusto talaga nila makilahok sa mga nangyayari sa lipunan, sa nangyayari nga sa demokrasya ng ating bansa. And of course, syempre, yung iba sa mga issues na gustong i-address ng youth, or gusto nilang ipasa sa President para ma-address, based sa mga response sa registration sa webinar are number 1, of course, enough technological resources for education sectors para maka-adapt sa new mode of learning. May mga nagsabi rin na, of course, syempre quality education during the pandemic. Tapos, may mga nagbanggit din ng issues on agri-aqua industries to secure food security today and for the generations to come. Syempre, may mga nagsabi din na wala pang ability to vote yet, yung iba, pero gusto nila na i-address yung issue about climate change. And meron ding mga nagsabi ng problems sa health sector, especially sa mga PWDs and yung system reformation sa educational sector. Meron din na mga nagsabi ng gender inequality, bigotry, and religion na meron ng impact sa government and nag-halt nga ng progress. So pati rin yung standards nga ng pagiging politics and ng pagiging isang politician. And of course, ang gusto ng maraming kabataan ngayon ay ang ligtas balik eskwela. Ayun, so tamang-tama na para sa susunod na session natin ang mga nabanggit ng ating mga participants na issues. Abangan natin yan sa next session natin with Now YouthLED PH na isa rin sa mga partners ng kabilang KASA 2022 campaign. So ayan, so tingnan natin kung meron na tayong mga questions dito. Ayan, so actually may mga nahanda rin kaming mga tanong. Okay, so Kuya Emil, isa po naming katanungan, kahit po ba hindi ako botante, kahit po ba hindi pa ako botante, may magagawa or may tutulong ba ako sa eleksyon? Balita ko po hindi pinapayagan ng 18 years old pababa ng IATF na makisali sa mga physical activities or face-to-face during the campaign period.
Yes, my short answer to your question is yes. You can take part in that. Maybe before ako sumagot pa, may bibigyan ako sa inyong kwento. When I was 10 years old, and this was way back in 1992, during the 1982 presidential elections, pumunta yung isang kandidato sa Sorsogon noon dito sa bayan namin. His name was Jovito Salonga. And then naghahanap sila ng kabataan noon na sasalita about the virtues of leadership, the virtues of the right to vote and all that. Katulad ng ginagawa ko ngayon. And then napili nila ako na magsalita. And then sabi ko, bakit ba tulad kong bata ang pipiliin nila? Akala ko dahil marunong ako magsalita ng Bicol at ng Iles at ng Tagalog at the same time. Pero nung araw na yun, nung gabi niya ako yung magsasalita na sa entablado, biglang nasa likod ako ng stage noon. And sobrang kabang-kaba talaga ako noon. Tapos nilapitan ako ni the late Jovito Salonga. Sabi niya, bakit ka ba kinakabahan? Sabi ko, natatakot po kasi ako kasi baka wala makinig sa akin, hindi ako paniwalaan. Tapos alam mo, sabi niya sa akin, alam mo, ang mga kabataan, di ba lagi niya sinasabi, kids daw do not lie. Diba? Kids daw, whenever they say something, it's based on the pureness, basically the how naive how in the eyes of the kid lumalabas yung honesty. So babalikan ko lang yung tanong kanina na tayong kabataan, kahit hindi pa tayo botante, yung opinion natin ay sumasalamin actually sa kagustuhan ng kabataan. So pag nakikita yun ng mga matanda, nakikita yun ng mga lola natin, minsan they're already jaded with their experiences. But if they go back to what a kid says, it's something that could actually open their eyes again to what's basic, what's essential. So wag niyong ipagpansantabi yung kakayahan or kapangyarihan nyo kahit hindi pa kayo botante. It's as basic as posting the right thing on your social media. It's as basic as posting rightful and truthful facts in your social media. So that's the basic thing that you can do. So there.
Ayan, maraming salamat Kuya Emil. Isa pang tanong, aside from voting, ano pang ibang mga activities na pwedeng mag-participate or contribute para sa pag-conduct ng elections?
Okay. Katulad ng pinakita ko sa slides kanina sa mga next steps, napakarami na pwede yung gawin aside sa pagboto. Nandyan siyempre yung paghihimok nyo sa mga kapwa-kabataan na mag-participate sa mga activities in your locality. Number one is pag-support sa inyong sangguniang kabataan. Nasa power nyo guys ang pagsabi sa mga sangguniang kabataan na wag na lang paliga or pa-beauty pageant yung ginagawa. Gawa naman tayo ng something more substantial, di ba? So, yan, isa sa mga pwede nyo gawin. Pakipag-usap, pakipagtalastasan sa mga nakakatanda, sa mga kamag-anak natin, kung ano nga ba yung virtues ng leadership na mga gusto natin makita sa mga susunod na public officials na gusto natin makita, di ba? Noong isang araw lang, kausap ko yung anak ng cousin ko dito sa Bicol. Sabi niya, Kuya, ano nga bang tinitingnan mo sa mga kandidato na tumatakbo ngayon? Paano ka bumoboto? Sabi ko, meron akong 3 tinitingnan. Number 1, syempre is integrity. Pangalawa is competence. At pangalawa is yung kanilang background. At nakakatawa kasi yung pamangkin ko na yon, paulit-ulit niya sinasabi yon. So every time he talks to my cousins, paulit-ulit niya sinasabi yon. So isipin nyo guys, the mere fact that you're talking to kids and to your relatives could actually mean something, could actually change their sway their votes to something na gustuhin din natin. So yun, isa yun sa mga pwedeng gawin, Jerty.
Ayan, maraming salamat. Actually, may isang nagtanong from Nemuel Ferrer. Sabi, bakit po yung iba walang pakialam sa eleksyon? Like yung pinsan ko po and yung kaibigan niya. I convinced them to register and thankfully, registered voters na po sila. Pero nung tinanong ko sino iboboto nila, sabi nila, hulaan na lang daw po nila. At ethical po ba yung kung bibigyan ko sila ng listahan ng dapat iboto or hayaan ko na lang po sila na mangkulan ng iboboto? Salamat po.
Okay. Paulit-ulit na sinasabi na sagrado yung boto, di ba? So syempre, ang una natin gawin is hayaan natin na wag nilang sayangin yung boto na yun, na wag lang maghula-hula. In terms of if it's ethical to give them a list of who to vote, siguro mas maganda kung ipaliwanag mo kung bakit yun yung mga napupusuan mong iboboto mo. Ipaliwanag mo na maaring yun din yung pwede lang iboto. Hindi kasi nag-stop yung pag-educate natin na, boto mo to, ganyan-ganyan. Like ako, pag tinatanong ako ng nanay, ng mama ko, anak, sino yung boto natin? So ako sinasabi ko ito. At sinasabi ko kung bakit. Very important yan kung bakit. Para mas maintindihan nila yung mga taong yun, yung mga kandidatong yun. Sometimes if I look at the youth, or not, hindi lang kabataan, pero yung mga kandidato na ayaw nilang bumoto, minsan hindi ko sila masisi kasi syempre baka iba yung priority nila sa buhay, baka iba yung may mga problema sila pinagdadaanan, but at the same time I'd always pull them back to how their vote could actually affect the future of our country. Hindi kasi pwede natin ipansantabi na isang boto lang naman ako Tandaan natin guys, yung boto natin could actually affect the course of our election, the course of the results of our election. So bawat boto importante talaga. So ayan.
Ayan, maraming salamat sa pagsagot ng tanong. Sana nasagot po ni Kuya Emil ang iyong tanong, Dembel Ferrer. Okay, so may isa pang tanong from Mac Gregor Diamante. Is democracy really the best form of government? For years, I have educated and edified myself with the necessary tenets on how to carefully choose a leader. But I came to realize that there are only a few like me who practice open-mindedness in reading news and articles so as to carefully choose the right people for the government positions. In fact, most of the people are not interested into politics. It got me into thinking that the only way for democracy to work is to require a critical mass of people who are active in politics. Thus, would it be more practical to give the right to choose for our leaders to specific people who are more intelligent in this field? What are your thoughts? Ayan, napakalalim ng tanong ni Sir MacGregor. Ayan, Kuya Emil, go.
Napakaganda ng tanong at pag-share na 'yon. Ako naniniwala ako na ang kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, kasaysayan ng pakikibaka ng mga kabataan, katulad ng pinakita ko sa mga slides ko kanina, ay talagang pinaghirapan. Yung demokrasya ng Pilipinas ay pinaghirapan na makamtan natin, di ba? Napakaraming yugto sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas na talagang tinest talaga yung resolve natin for us to enjoy the democracy that we have right now. I would say that democracy is still the best form of government. In fact, we would not enjoy what we have right now. We would not have this webinar if hindi democratic ang ating bayan natin. So I would say that democracy is still the best form of government, if that's your question. I would not also discount na dapat yung boto natin na ibigay natin sa mga mas matalino or sa matalinong tao. Kasi naniniwala ako na bawat Pilipino, bawat tao, meron tayong karapatan at again, opportunity to still understand what we want for the country. Huwag natin tanggalin yung opportunity na yun guys na makaboto tayo at mag-take part dun sa pagpanday ng better country, ng better Philippines, di ba? Laging hinahammer sa atin, pagboto, pag-register ay isang right at isang responsibility. Pero in a developing country like us, it's also an opportunity that we should not take for granted. So ayun, yun yung gusto kong i-impart sa inyo.
Ayan, maraming salamat Kuya Emil. Sana nasagot po ni Kuya Emil ang iyong tanong. Sir MacGregor. Okay, may isa pang tanong from Edmond Vista. Kuya Emil, paano naman po yung mga nahihirapan sa pagbabasa pero registered voter na? Hindi po ba mahihirapan din sila sa pagpili ng nararapat na kandidato dahil doon? I know someone po kasi na tinatanong sa akin ito, but I can't answer it kasi hindi ko po alam isasagot.
Okay. Actually, dun pa lang sa pag-register, Jerty, meron dun sa registration form during the voter registration process, meron opportunity doon kung saan pwede mong ilista kung kailangan mo ng assessor during the elections. Para masamahan ka. For example, ako, ang mama ko, she's already a senior citizen and she can't walk na. So nilagay talaga ng kailangan niya ng assistor. Yung isang tita ko naman, blind naman siya, kailangan niya ng assistor. So hindi talaga siya hindi talaga mabasa. So pwede 'yon. Pero in terms of if they can actually be guided during the elections, if they did not list elections. Actually, hindi ko masasagot yan. Maaring ang kasamahan natin si Attorney Dred Ople can answer this if, for example, during the registration, hindi mo na i-specify na kailangan mo na assist if you can actually still bring an assist during the election. So I can bring in Dred, perhaps to shed light on this.
Ayan, so may
Kuya
pagtawag po kay
Emil.
Attorney Dred.
Oo nga
Hi,
eh.
Dred.
Hi, Kuya Emil. Yes, during election day, kahit hindi mo na ilagay nung ikaw ay nagrehistro na kailangan mo ng assistance, maaari pa ring magpa-assist. So sasabihin lang ito doon sa mga Board of Election inspector natin, yung mga BEI natin or mga teachers na nasa room na kailangan mo ng assistance. So, ino-note lang nila yon, may form na papa-fill upan sa mag-a-assist sa iyo. So, maaari pa rin magpa-assist during election day, kahit hindi mo na-note during registration.
Ayan. Maraming salamat Ate Dred sa very exactong sagot na yon. So, I hope Edmond nasagot namin ang iyong katanungan. So,
Ayan, ayan, maraming salamat sa pagtanong noon, Edmond Vista. Mula naman kay Alvin John Celis. On the context of votes over influence, how can we raise our voice if the position individuals are overlaying their powers and influence over our rights to raise awareness and factual information, or where some are being threatened?
Okay. I would say na sa panahon ngayon, mas may laya ang generation nyo because you have social media to actually raise your voice as compared to nung panahon namin na wala talagang what do you call this, talagang groundwork lang yung yung nangyayari. I mean yung pwede. You can use social media to actually to actually emphasize and amplify your stand on issues para matalo mo kumbaga yung mas malaking boses ng mga mas makapangyarihan at may influence sa locality nyo. Like for example, itong the past few months, 'di ba? Iba-ibang kampanya ng iba-ibang kandidato, iba-ibang issue ang binabato, pero at the end of the day kasi nananaig pa rin kung yung katotohanan, nananaig pa rin na ang mga tao, they can see through past the lies, they can people see through the campaign na ginagawa para sa isang persona na binubuo lamang ng pera. My point is that I would still like to believe na when you become consistent with what you believe in, you stick to your principles, so mananaig pa rin talaga ang katotohanan. So there.
Ayun. Maraming salamat po sa pagsagot ng tanong na yon. Sana nasagot po namin ang tanong, Sir Alvin. Okay, so ito, may nagpadala po ng anonymous question. Ito ay galing sa isang anonymous participant. So, political dynasty, mabuti o masama ba ito? Ano ang dapat gawin para maiwasan na maabuso ito ng mga makapangyarihang pamilya?
Okay, napaka controversial ng tanong na ito. I'm answering this on a personal point of view, okay? Para sa akin, hindi ako naniniwala sa political dynasty. Para sa akin, ang pagsilbi ay again calling, hindi siya karera, hindi siya isang kumpanya. Ang panilbihan ay hindi siya right na pinapasa mo mula sa anak, hindi siya isang monarkiya na pwede mong ipagpasa-pasa nyo sa asawa, sa anak, sa ganun. Hindi dapat siya narapat na ganoon. Kahit sabihin natin na public service is in the blood of, for example, the sons and the daughters, hindi pa rin ako naniniwala doon. Lahat ng tao ay may kakayahan maging leader at sana walang may monopolyo ng katotohanan, ng kagalingan. So hindi ako naniniwala sa political dynasty.
Ayun, maraming salamat maraming salamat Kuya Emil sa pagsagot doon. Nagtanong po nun, sana nasagot niya po yung tanong niyo. Okay, from Nick Wilson Tapel. Sana nasabi ko ng tama yung iyong tanong. Hi, hindi ko po ako sure kung nasabi po ito kanina, pero itatanong ko na lang din po. Na wala po kasi yung stub ko last time nung nag-register ako. First time voter po ako. May site po ba na pwedeng mapuntahan at makita yung information ko as a voter? Thank you po. So, context, 'di ba, sa mga first time voters, 'di ba, pagkatapos magpasa na requirements at saka yung no form, 'di ba, may binibigay na stubs sa huli. So yung sa kanya raw po kasi ay nawala, ano raw pong site na pwedeng mapuntahan at makita yung information niya as a voter.
Actually, nung first time voter ako, nangyari din sa akin ito, and I was able to verify that I have actually my registration was successful when I emailed what do you call this, COMELEC, at sumasagot sila dati. Pero to be honest, hindi ko alam kung active na uli ang COMELEC website ngayon in answering if you're a successful registrant sa locality na yon. Isang pwede yung gawin actually is to go to your local COMELEC office to verify if successful nga ba yung pag-register mo. Actually, that's also one thing that I'm going to do kasi I transferred my registration from Metro Manila to Sorsogon City. Dito na kasi ako boboto simula sa election. So I would have to do that as well. So Ate Dred, may iba pa bang pamamaraan para ma-verify yung registration natin kung nawala yung registration stub?
Yes, Emil. Dahil pandemya ngayon, baka mahirapan sila magpunta sa local COMELEC. Kaya naman po pwede silang mag-email sa itd@comelec.gov.ph. So sumasagot naman po sila, yan ay tried and tested na natin. Ita-type din po natin sa Zoom chat yung email kung saan nila pwedeng ipadala. Sasabihin lang po nila doon na gusto nilang i-verify ang kanilang registration at sasabihin nila kung ano ang kanilang buong pangalan at yung kanilang birthday. Pero actually, Kuya Emil, bago maghalalan, papadalhan din naman tayo ng COMELEC ng tinatawag na Voters Information and Instruction Sheet or VIIS, kung saan nandoon, kung saan tayo boboto na presinto at yung sample ballot din. Ipapadala yan ng COMELEC sapagkat ang COMELEC ay mandated sa automated election law na magpadala sa bawat botante ng VIIS. So para sa mga first-time voters, magpapadala ang COMELEC ng VIIS para sa lahat. Pero kung gusto nyo na advance, i-check nyo na ang inyong registration at masigurado na kayo ay makakaboto, so email nyo lang ang COMELEC sa itd@comelec.gov.ph.
Ayan, maraming salamat Ate Red para sa specific na kaalaman na ibinahagi mo. So again, itd@comelec.gov.ph. So ayun.
Ayun, maraming salamat. Ito po, may isa pa pong tanong. What are the activities of COMELEC that we can join to get more information about the elections?
Well, una-una, you can visit the COMELEC website because they actually have a list of activities there. But I would also encourage you to look into the activities of the civil society, youth organizations like itong ginagawa ng YouthLed para mas makita natin kung ano pang pwedeng gawin nyo bilang mga kabataan, di ba, sa narapit na election. I would also encourage you to look into and attend and watch debates both for the national and local elections. Very important yun para ma-fact check natin yung mga sinasabi ng ating mga kandidato. Hindi walang tayo umasa dun sa mga TV commercials na nakikita natin online. Dapat i-fact check din natin sila. Ang COMELEC actually, ang Commission on Elections, YouthLed has a very good relationship with COMELEC. In fact, we would always invite the Commission on Elections in some of our activities. So yeah, what we're doing is also some of the activities which you could take part in. Ayun.
Ayun, maraming salamat dyan, Kuya Emil. Ito po, may isa pa pong question from Mark Angelo Ocariza. Sana po nabanggit ko ng tama ang inyong pangalan. In the rampant proliferation of fake news and historical revisionism, especially in social media, what advice can you give po to us voters who want to be rightfully informed in casting our votes?
Una-una magbasa tayo, okay? Magbasa. From the right sources, from legitimate sources. Pangalawa, I would also encourage you to talk about what you read with your peers. na wag lang nating paniwalaan kung ano mga nakikita natin online. Wag nating paniwalaan yung mga nakikita natin sa TikTok or sa YouTube. Mas magandang kunin natin yung kuro-kuro ng mga kasama natin. If you think there are controversial issues, it's also good if you could actually seek the help and seek clarity from experts. Napakaganda yon. In terms of historical revisionism, napakalungkot na napaka-rampant ng ganitong gawain over the past years. Siyempre, gusto rin naman ng taong yun na maging maganda yung kanilang reputation, pero at the expense of the right information. So I would say you always go back to the right sources. Marami akong website actually na binabasa. For one, I could promote actually ito. Sandali ha. Meron akong website, di pala website, but rather Facebook page. Tinitingnan ko lagi ito, yung Fact Check Philippines. So ang Fact Check Philippines, it's a coalition of independent groups who look into what are being said or what are being churned out by the candidates. So they do fact checking and ensure lang na aligned and consistent yung mga sinasabi nila. So these are from verifiable sources and verifiable organizations who are, tirelessly working on this. So yun.
Ayan, maraming salamat po sa pagsagot sa tanong na iyon. Okay, so we're down to the last two questions na lang. So yung isa from Jensen Pedrola, Kuya Emil, saan po kaya pwedeng ma-access yung information ng mga candidates, especially yung mga local government, sa mga local government? Most of the time kasi we're just paying attention to the national government and most of the anomaly happens on local government.
Johnson, unfortunately, ang mga kandidato sa local government, you can only search them either on Facebook or if they have special websites, right? Wala kasing national government or ahensya or rather a website that puts together all information sa mga local government candidates. So talagang titingnan mo talaga siya, isa-isahin mo siya sa locality nyo. So for example, ako dito sa Sorsogon, nung nakita ko kung sino yung mga kandidato sa pagka-gobernador, sa pagka-kongresista, sa pagka-mayor, talagang sinerge ko siya isa-isa yung mga pangalan nila sa Facebook at sa website nila, at I also Google them kung sa kung ano mga pinaggawa nila nung araw. But unfortunately, wala talagang national agency that collates all these local government positions or local government candidates. So ayun. Pero tama ka, niniwala ako na karamihan sa mga anomaly actually ay nasa local government. It's unfortunate that some mismanagement and non-compliant practices are being normalized in the local government kasi wala na nakasanayan na siya at dapat talagang kaharapin talaga siya, tingnan talaga siya natin. So there.
Ayan, maraming salamat po. So last question na lang. In your opinion, sir, a speaker who has selected his or her or their candidate already, can we still call them an effective speaker for equal lecture or not? Why? And what can we do if we encounter this kind of speakers?
Okay. Well, first and foremost ako, I would not say na I would have a final list of candidates, and not until during the elections. I can see that ever since I started voting at the age of 18, nagbabago-bago pa rin yung mga binoboto ko until the end of the campaign period. I would also say that the person that I'm supporting right now, it's not in the same political party as I voted in 2016 or the same way I voted in 2010. My point lang is that let's respect who are the chosen candidates of our peers or the speakers that we're listening to, and be very vigilant, be very critical on what they're saying during the talk. Whenever you attend talk, or whenever I attend discussions, I'm also very critical in terms of the information that they are sharing. Ayoko naman na ma-influensyahan niya ako. My decision would be an amalgamation or a combination of what I hear, at the same time what I believe in, what my principles are. So yun. So ako, naniniwala ako na ang mga kabataan katulad ninyo, hindi kayong basta-bastang maimpluwensyahan ng isang speaker lamang. Dapat kaya nating limiin at maging critical tayo sa mga iboboto natin. So yun.
Yan. Maraming salamat Kuya Emil sa pagsagot ng lahat ng mga questions natin today ng ating mga participants. So katulad nga po sa isang question kanina, 'di ba? Parang about sa information info sheet para sa mga local candidates, ganun. Maari po actually kayong mga scholars, pwede din kayong magtulong-tulong upang gumawa ng profiles or info sheet para sa mga local na kandidato upang matulungan ng ibang mga botante. Ayan, so maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga nagtanong, and of course, kung sakaling may mga tanong pa kayo, open na open po ang YouthLed PH Facebook page. So doon nyo na lang po isend ang inyong mga katanungan. Ayan, so sa ano po kanina sa munting pa-quiz po ni Kuya Emil, meron pong isang bukod tanging nanalo po sa kanyang pa-quiz at ito ay si Riza Laganzo. Again, Riza Laganzo, i-message ka na lang po namin para sa detalye po pagdating sa pagkuha po ng inyong pa-premyo. So, congratulations. So bago tayo tuluyang magtapos ay nais lamang po natin na ipaalala na para sa mga nais makatanggap ng kanilang Certificate of Participation ay kinakailangan ng magsagot ng evaluation na nasa ating Zoom chat at doon po namin ipapadala sa inyo registered email address ang e-certificate ninyo. Naatasan po ako na kayo ay hikayatin na sumali sa aming kampanya Ang Kabilang Ka sa 2022. Tatlo ang aming agenda. Kasama ka o yung Accessible Voters Registration, kabahagi ka o yung Voters Education at Agenda Building, at kaisa ka o yung Post-Election Participation on Democratic Governance. Kasama ang aming network of youth organizations na sa ngayon ay 891 na, matagumpay na nagawa ang Voters Registration Campaign at #ExtendTheReg na naging instrumental para sa pagkakaroon ng 5.4 million na first-time voters na rehistrado. Sa ngayon, ang aming focus ay ang voters education at agenda building. Patuloy na pagbibigay impormasyon sa mga kabataan sa kahalagahan ng pagboto, pagsasaliksik ng mga issue na nakaapekto lalo't higit sa kabataan upang ihatid at gawing election issue para dalhin bilang program of government ng mga kandidato, pagbibigay kaalaman kung paano nagtatrabaho ang iba't ibang sangay ng gobyerno, kaya't kritikal ang pagpili ng tamang leader para sa tamang posisyon. Ayan. Magkakaroon din po kami ng Election Day Monitoring Initiative sa mga regional clusters na kasalukuyan naming binubuo lalo't higit na sa mga vote-rich provinces at key cities. Kaya ano pa ang hinihintay nyo? Join na! Nasa ating Zoom chat ang link. Ngayon na nasagot na natin ang ating papel, alamin naman natin ang ating ambag sa video na ito ng aming coalition partner na participate.
Sino-sino nga ba ang mga pinakamakapangyarihang tao sa Pilipinas? Si Pangulong Duterte at mga politiko? Mga artista at influencers? Mga pari at iyong malalapit kay Lord? Si Darna and Friends? Ang tamang sagot? None of the above. Ikaw ang pinakamakapangyarihang tao sa bansa.
Paano masabi?
Ayon nga sa konstitusyon,
sovereignty resides in the people, and all government authority emanates from them.
Wow! Big word! Ibig sabihin, galing sa taong bayan ang kapangyarihan ng gobyerno at ng mga politiko. Dahil ikaw ang bumoto para maluklok sila sa pwesto. Ikaw ang nagbayad ng buwis para may panggastos sa mga proyekto ng pamahalaan. At ikaw rin ang may kapangyarihang alisin sila sa pwesto.
Galing ha?
Eto pa.
The prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people.
ibig sabihin nandiyan ang gobyerno para pagsilbihan at protektahan ka. Kulang pa rin? O eto,
Civilian authority is at all times supreme over the military.
ibig sabihin, mas makapangyarihan ka kaysa sa militar o sino mang may armas. Kaya nga public servant ang tawag sa mga politiko, lingkod bayan. Dapat paglingkuran nila ang taong bayan.
Tatandaan natin, kaya nga tayo may gobyerno, kaya nga tayo may demokrasya ngayon, dahil binigay natin ang kapangyarihan na yan dito sa mga elected officials para patakbuhin nila ang ating gobyerno.
Pero aminin mo, minsan baliktad ang nangyayari. Iyong mga lingkod bayan pa ang nagahari at nananamantala sa bayan. Mga pulis at sundalo pa ang nananakit sa mamamayan.
Dahil akala niya may armas siya, dahil akala niya may kapangyarihan siya, dahil akala niya meron siyang kayamanan, above the law na siya. Pagka ganyan ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon ng pang-aabuso, nagkakaroon ng maling kultura, at kailangan po ay baguhin po natin yan. Ang gobyerno ay nandyan para pagsilbihan ng taong bayan.
Ngayon, alam mo na, kailangan mong protektahan ang kapangyarihan mo bilang mamamayan. Gamitin mo ang kapangyarihang magsalita, bumoto at makiisa sa kapwa Pilipino. At ipaalam mo sa mga naghahari-hariang lingkod bayan kung sino ang tunay na makapangyarihan. Alamin kung ano ang mga kasalukuyang ginagawa ng Participate. Bumisita lamang sa inclusivedemocracy.ph at i-follow ang aming social media accounts.
Muli, maraming salamat sa inyong pakikibahagi. Congratulations sa ating mga winners at huwag kalimutang itag ang LCF at YouthLed sa mga social media pages na nakikita sa ating screen at baka kayo pa ang mapiling na mananalo for Best Insight or Comment for today's webinar Series 1. Sign up na sa kabilang ka sa 2022. Tandaan, ang pakikilahok ng kabataan ay mahalaga. Tayo ang tagapagmana ng bukas. Kaya tungkulin natin na huwag iasa sa mga mas nakatatanda sa atin ang mamanahing bukas. Tulad ngayong eleksyon, bukod sa pagsisiguro na makaboto sa araw ng eleksyon, maaaring mag-volunteer ang ating mga kababayan bilang election monitor sa mga sumusunod na organisasyon. NAMFREL para sa election observation at random manual audit, Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan at PPCRV, Election Day Assistance sa mga botante at pag-retrieve ng election returns para sa quick count. Rappler at Philippine Star para sa hashtag #FactFirst o pag-uulat ng nagpapakalat ng fake news. At YouthLed Youth Vote Philippines at kabilang ka sa 2022 Coalition para sa Election Day Monitoring at the polling presence. So maraming salamat sa mga nakibahagi ngayong araw. Ito po si Ate Jerty na nagpapaalalang may bilang ang boto mo.